Happy Wednesday, folks. Fun one coming up for you today on Gojo and Golic. Lots to get to last night, including the NBA. Jimmy Butler continuing the golden era in Golden State. Are they now real contenders after rolling over the Milwaukee Bucks with no Steph Curry in the lineup? And the first four delivers. Dalen Cuff going to stop by with us today from ESPN to, quite honestly, help me and Dad fill out our brackets so we win the pool and win the cash. And with all this talk about Jaxson Dart moving his way up in mock drafts and in round one, my former head coach Charlie Weis joins us to discuss the hype surrounding this quarterback and if it's real heading into the NFL draft. All that and more on Gojo and Golic starting right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. with you guys today. Fun one coming up, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and watch us here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Great guests on today's show, in addition to ESPN's Dalen Cuff, going to stop by, talk about college basketball in the bracket, and my former head coach Charlie Weis, obviously longtime NFL offensive coordinator, Super Bowl champion with the Patriots, and the father of Charlie Weis Jr., the offensive coordinator of Ole Miss and the coach of Jaxson Dart at Ole Miss, going to join us in hour number 2. And Jessica Smetana from the Dan Le Batard Show, going to stop by as we are early into the Formula One season. We're getting ready to go with Women's March Madness. She shares our sickness for Notre Dame sports in all their forms. But, Dad, speaking of sports in all their forms, good Lord, the first four, I know you have a long conflicted relationship with actually calling it the first round of the tournament the way that we got instructed for years, but whatever you want to call it, it delivered in two very different ways last night with an incredible This Is March buzzer beater type moment for Alabama State over St. Francis, and then an absolute ass kicking by a Tar Heels team that no one seemed to want in the tournament. So whatever you want to call it, Dad, it delivered in a big way for March last night.
Well, you wonder what it's doing for people. Now, again, the people have filled out their brackets. They'll wait to fill out their bracket until Thursday, or they're doing multiple brackets. But it'll be interesting now in the majority of brackets how far people have North Carolina going, because that wasn't a game. They smoked San Diego State, 95-68. Now they take on Ole Miss. And we've seen playing winning teams make a little bit of a run, and everybody is I think, okay, can UNC do this? You know, how many can they go? I've heard at least Sweet 16 that they could make.
You heard that from me in the pre-show because I filled out my bracket immediately after that game was over and put them in the Sweet 16. Iowa's got injuries in their backcourt. You got a nice run here. Ole Miss, while battle-tested in the SEC, not one of the SEC teams I actually know or watch, so they're going down to R.J. Davis, who broke Hubert Brown's record of made threes in a game. He went 6 for 6. Hubert Davis had gone 5 for 5 in a game as a player. So all of this, absolutely, Dad, leading me into taking them and putting them into the Sweet 16. Yes, I am that guy.
Yeah, if they made the Sweet 16, they would obviously beat Ole Miss. And then if Iowa State wins, you mentioned they're missing their guard, they would most likely, to try and get to the Elite Eight, have to play number 2 seed Michigan State. That may be where it ends, even if they reach the Sweet 16. But listen, March Madness and crazy finishes, that was really the St. Francis and Alabama State game, right? I mean, that was, I don't know if it was the same kind of play for those who are a little younger and maybe don't remember all the way back to 92 in the Elite Eight game of Kentucky and Duke. The two blue bloods, that was 103-102 Kentucky lead with 2 seconds to go. And Duke had that long under the basket pass to Christian Laettner, who caught it at the free throw line, hit a turnaround jumper, and won it for Duke. This was a long pass back and forth at the end, turnover by St. Francis under their own basket. That's how Alabama State got the ball. And a long pass that truly was like a Hail Mary. You had a bunch of players down under the basket, and the ball was tipped, and the ball was caught by Amar Knox, and he lays it in with they said a second to go. But that was truly like a Hail Mary, where the ball got back, basically batted in the air, and he caught it right under the basket and just had an easy layup. That was a miracle finish in the good for Alabama State and for St. Francis. What a way for your season to end.
Here's Alabama State head coach Tony Madlock in the locker room addressing the team after the game.
We told y'all about our games, all of them. But I told them, we spend more time on situational stuff. Touchdown, great pass. Way to go get it. And then all they want, I want this ball. I want this ball, and I got to score this ball. Man, that's what you got to do, man. That is a winning play. That is a winning pass. That's everything, man. Everything that we talk about. Again, we ain't through. Let's keep playing.
Keep playing, they get to do. And you're right, Dad. We had seen football play recently in a final moment in a game in the NBA when I think it was the Indiana Pacers scored on what basically looked like a wheel route to tie a game and send that one into overtime. And here, the Hail Mary sends Alabama State on to the next round. And they're the ones you think of when you think of the first four and finding your way into the tournament and making some magic happen. It is absolutely the formula there. North Carolina is less fun for everyone for a ton of reasons. They're a blue blood that was highly ranked going into the season. They've got a ton of talent, and no one wanted them there. One quad, one win, and this win, Dad, does not change bad process. This is like when we talked about in the college football playoff 2 years ago, Florida State going out and losing on the other side after all their players opted out once being left out of the college football playoff, robbed them of that. The result does not change the process in here, and a process that many people, myself included, don't think should have landed North Carolina in the tournament. But if you're those players, none of that matters because, Dad, you know how this is on the inside. They have had to hear all of the worst things said about them, all the West Virginia governor wanting to sue the NCAA because they got in over West Virginia and all this stuff. So if I'm those players, I'm taking I don't care if it's against San Diego State. I don't care who it's against. I'm taking my victory lap because it's not those guys' fault. Like, those guys went out there and did what they were supposed to do. Well, not really, and that's why they were on the bubble to begin with. But they got here. They had a resounding showing. And so I can remember being a college kid enough to know when you hear everyone on the outside talking about you like that, it's got to feel pretty damn good to be able to go out there and rub their nose in it.
Oh, yeah, and especially where there are many that think they could make a little bit of a run. Now, they could lose to Ole Miss and be done, could be one and done, but that's why, and quite honestly, that's why you use my method of multiple sheets. In some you have them done at one, and some you have them going on to the Sweet 16. We'll see. Now, Alabama State's going to play number 1 overall seed Auburn. I don't think many people think there'll be much of a chance there. Tonight you have the other two playing games, Mount St. Mary's against American. The winner's going to take on Duke, a number 1 seed. And then you have Xavier against Texas. The winner of that is the 11 seed going against Illinois. So I wonder if the same could be said if Texas where Texas is 19 and 15. I mean, I don't know if we'll say the same about that winner making a run. It seems to be focused more on North Carolina as an 11 seed being able to make a run.
Yeah, North Carolina is just going to be the team that gets everyone's eye because of how they entered this tournament. That's why I'll be curious to talk with Dalen, just what the what it feels like the ceiling is for this team now that they've gotten in and now that they have advanced to the actual tournament. No disrespect to the first four, but kind of disrespect to the first four, and figure out what to do with Hubert Davis's squad as they advance. An incredible performance. San Diego State couldn't get around them on offense at all. They were a little bit banged up themselves in the middle, and so all these things end that season pretty quickly, and North Carolina gets to dance on as we get our first real big This Is March moments yesterday in the tournament. Dad, on the NBA side of basketball last night here, your Cavaliers, man, 2-game slide. I don't know what's going on there, but ever since you jumped on the bandwagon, it does seem like now all of a sudden the juju has gone in the opposite direction. Do you feel partially responsible? Totally responsible? Like,
no, I don't feel partially responsible at all. I'm not one of those that sits in a certain seat if my team is winning or do a superstitious do a certain thing. It's the guys on the court. And right now they've lost 2, still 6.5 up on Boston. They're not going to lose that lead. They'll have home court. No, I'm not concerned. It's a long season. You go through a little bit of a downside. They've had 2 15-plus game winning streaks. I'm not going to get concerned over 2 straight losses.
Probably why they lost, because you're not willing to do what it takes as a fan and sit in the proper place and make sure that you don't move things in the right spot here. They have to question your dedication to this cause, and that's sad to see. Someone's dedication we don't have to question, though. Jimmy Butler continues to do the damn thing. No Steph Curry for the Warriors last night against the Bucks. He was out resting, and Steve Kerr talking about he needs a break from carrying the team. Steph Curry just saying the obvious, my back hurts, which my brother in Christ is someone in their mid-30s. I get it, man. I get it. Me and Steph Curry, one and the same with that. But Jimmy Butler goes off for 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 100 assists. He now becomes the fastest player in Warriors franchise history to record 100-plus rebounds and 100-plus assists, and talked after the game about how he views his role in this Golden State team.
I think I've matured a lot and grew into that. Whenever I was young in the league, it was always score, show everybody that you belong in this league. I know that I belong in this league now. I'm comfortable with who I am as a player. So now it's always about my guys. Whatever y'all need me to do, Dre's the same way, Steph's the same way. Like, all of us that have been in the league for a little bit, it's only about winning at this point in time in our career. And for them, it always has been. Not the same for me, but now more than ever.
So, Dad, Jimmy Butler now 15-2 since he came over and joined Golden State after the trade deadline. And you heard him. He hits all the right buttons at the beginning of his tenure. There's a great article in The Ringer about Jimmy Butler and the early honeymoon stage in these organizations that he's been a part of, from Chicago to then Minnesota to the 76ers to the Miami Heat most recently. And now here, where everyone seems to sing the praises of Jimmy Butler. And, Dad, on the court, he does give them a certain calm when you don't have Steph Curry out there. And for the late-stage Warriors, it's been a lot like the late-stage Lakers, where you're constantly looking for answers to the question of what to do when you have the non-Steph minutes or the non-LeBron minutes. And both of those teams now have resounding answers to those questions in the form of Jimmy Butler and Luka Doncic, respectively, for those two teams. But you saw, right, Milwaukee was able to make a run in the third quarter of that game. You wondered if the wheels might come off this thing. And Jimmy Butler and the rest of this group are able to calm things down and hold on and get a win in a game they jumped out early on. So, Dad, I have already said I was wronger than wrong about this acquisition. The whole Jimmy Butler snafu at the end of the Miami Heat tenure, I just thought was blustering for a player that was past his prime. But we've seen yet again that there is something about a locked-in Jimmy Butler that just taps into skill set that's one of the ultimate binding agents in the NBA. So as they sit now, I think still the 6th seed in the Western Conference, and I don't know how much ground they're going to be able to make up between now at the end of the season, but I don't know if you agree, Dad, there's no doubt they're one of the most dangerous teams in the Western Conference because of the wealth of experience that everyone involved in this core has when it matters in the postseason.
Yeah, they're one of those teams you don't want to face in the playoffs. Do I think they can win a championship? No, I don't think they can do that. But I do think they can be dangerous in the playoffs. And another reason they're dangerous is because they're on the clock. Just like the Lakers are on the clock with LeBron, right? It's year to year, and they make the trade for Luka. And all we were talking about was Jimmy Butler wanting out of Miami until the trade for Luka and AD happened. We were like, oh, my God, a real trade that's going to have real effect on the court. And it had for the Lakers, and it certainly had in a negative way for the Mavs when AD got hurt in the first game he was out there. But then Jimmy Butler goes to Golden State. We're like, okay, well, there's finally an ending to the story there. But they have been unbelievably competitive. As you mentioned, 15-2, but they are on the clock. Jimmy Butler is 35. Steph Curry is 37. Draymond Green, who's up for Defensive Player of the Year, is 35. So they are on the clock of when time is going to run out for this group. So, yeah, I mean, they're sitting in the 6th slot right now. A game, the Timberwolves are just in the 7th slot, a half game away. The Clippers are 1 game away in the 8th slot, and they're 3 games away from moving up to the 5 slot, or actually the 4 slot. The Lakers and Grizzlies are both 13.5 back. And the Lakers, how much longer are they going to be without LeBron? I know they've won a couple, which has been good for them to see. They were at 2 when LeBron got hurt. They're now tied in the 4 slot. We'll see if they keep slipping until LeBron gets back. But yeah, do I think Golden State can win a title? I really don't think so, but I think obviously they're going to be way more competitive than we thought. By the way, really quickly, let's give Draymond Green some credit. He held Giannis Antetokounmpo to his worst shooting night in 2 seasons. Giannis was 5 of 16. It was his worst shooting night in 2 seasons. Draymond Green had a couple of steals, had 4 blocks, just 3 points, but he's not out there to score points. So he was a big factor in this game as well.
With all that in mind, I don't know why they couldn't at least in theory win a championship, Dad. Like, to your point, I think if we're handing out the same award that we gave in the NFL season to the Los Angeles Rams at the end of the year, where they became the team that no one wanted to face because everyone got back healthy at the right time and they got that added bit of juice to reach their ceiling at the end of the year, with a roster that's surrounding Matthew Stafford feels a little bit older, why can Golden State not capture that same magic right now, Dad? Steph Curry being a little bit worn down at this point in the season is somewhat understandable, and so how you manage that over the next month is going to matter a lot. But once you get into the postseason, we just saw in a very competitive field in the Summer Olympics over the summer in Paris, Steph Curry take over and help Team USA win in a pivotal moment. We've seen Jimmy Butler. We're not worried about that time of year. It's this time of year we weren't sure he could still bring it. And Draymond Green, you mentioned, just listen to him and he'll tell you, playing at a Defensive Player of the Year level, why not Golden State in a Western Conference field that outside of Denver and Los Angeles is largely devoid of teams that have that championship experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, Oklahoma City's still the best team in the league. And you mentioned the Rams. The Rams still lost. Yeah, nobody wanted to play them, but they lost in the divisional round. They didn't get past it. So do I think Golden State can be dangerous opponent? Yes, more dangerous than they were without question. But no, I don't see them getting out of the West. But I do see them, as far as the length or the time that they have. I mean, you'll have Jimmy next year. He's in an option year next year. But if you keep this team together, you may get another year again, 35, 37, 35. I mean, they're an older club. So I think that adds to their, hey, if we're going to get it done, we need to get it done now.
Yeah, there's certainly a sense of urgency surrounding all of this. And you listen to the Warriors talk and you listen to Steve Kerr and company talk about why this works, and so much of it points back to everyone around here, including Jimmy Butler, respects Steph Curry so much. And his status, even on a team with stars on it, as a guy that's in that LeBron territory of reverence from current players, everyone understands and kind of feels an obligation to Steph to go out here and do it because he's been the one holding it all together as they've weathered these changes in the roster, as they've let guys like Klay Thompson walk and go off to the next chapter and the final chapter of their journey. Everyone does kind of feel this obligation to Steph to go out here and make it happen. And so I do agree there's that sense of urgency, but now there's that sense of calm that Jimmy Butler brings to this situation. We saw it on display last night. We've seen it on display and able to help them since he's come over as a part of this team. And I do think it makes them the team that no one wants to face in the postseason, where I'm going to officially stamp them with that now with, 16, 17 games left, whatever it may be. I don't think anyone wants parts on the current Golden State Warriors. Warriors right now, and they better look out. Coming up next, though, is our national nightmare finally over? A potential answer to the Aaron Rodgers question in Minnesota. Next on Gojo and Golic. The last big quarterback domino of the 2025 NFL offseason may finally be wobbling and ready to fall. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here on Gojo and Golic. Jessica Smetana from the Dan Levitard Show going to join us in about 15 minutes here. But, Dad, Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network tweeted this out this morning. The Vikings have rejected multiple trade calls on J.J. McCarthy, telling other teams that they're moving forward with him as their quarterback, sources say. The team plans to add a veteran, but they're not pursuing Aaron Rodgers at this time. McCarthy now enters the offseason as QB1. So it sort of buried the lead in this situation and replaced it with another interesting one, which is, Dad, with the conversation around the potential of a guy like Aaron Rodgers coming in there to steady the team in the here and now. Some teams in a quarterback-needy offseason doing what they should have done and doing what people suggested going into the end of last year when Sam Darnold had played so well, picking up the phone and seeing if they can pry the former first-round pick J.J. McCarthy out of Minnesota. This now seems to very softly shut the door on the Aaron Rodgers notion in Minnesota. So, right decision in your mind for them to go this route?
Well, I mean, listen, we talked about both on the field for the start of J.J. McCarthy's career and off the field, the presence of Aaron Rodgers and his unique personality in a locker room. So that obviously has to go into the equation as well, along with the, hey, we have the ability to win now in a division because of the changes in Detroit can be more up for grabs than maybe people had thought. So and they must think, I'll put it this way, Mike, they must have seen enough of J.J. McCarthy before J.J. McCarthy got hurt, where they thought you know what, this is going to be our guy in this offense run by Kevin O'Connell. Now, again, whether he's back completely, now he got hurt early, obviously, so he's had plenty of time to recover. If he takes, I would imagine the job would be his right away, depending on when he's ready. If not, you bring in a bridge quarterback, which isn't going to be Aaron Rodgers. There's certainly a few out there that you could do to bridge to JJ, but I think this talks about they have more faith in what they saw out of JJ McCarthy and how he's coming back from the knee injury than trying to have kind of a gap year of, hey, let's try and win it with an old veteran.
Yeah, the right move, I think, and said yesterday for Minnesota, provided that J.J. McCarthy's health was dialed in, as you said, and that he'd be ready to go by the start of the season. You got to have confidence in the system you've built up around there. It's earned confidence. You've shown it over the course of multiple iterations of this team that Kevin O'Connell can go and provide a soft landing spot for your quarterback. And then Aaron Rodgers was going to do nothing but delay and potentially derail that by coming over to this team, even if it meant some success more immediately than J.J. McCarthy might be able to provide. Like, there's also that part of it where going into this season now with Minnesota, the first quarter of the season, we shouldn't be talking about buyer's remorse if things are a little bit slower on the draw because J.J. McCarthy is essentially a rookie, because J.J. McCarthy's coming off injury. Like, Dad, I do fully expect with him, with the new parts on the offensive line, like most teams, it's going to take a little bit going into this season, but ultimately that doesn't make this or have a rendering on this decision, which I think, kind of like we talked about before with March Madness, it's about the process that led you to this point, and I think the process was sound for Minnesota and how they went through this.
You know, you talk about a first-round pick quarterback, especially earlier in the draft, going to a bad team and there being some growing pains. Now, we saw C.J. Stroud work through that. We saw Jaden Daniels work through that and come out the other side, obviously, as offensive rookies of the year. So with JJ's actually, it'll be his first year. He's not considered a rookie anymore, but it's going to be his rookie time on the field, his first time on the field. But he's on a better team than a high-picking team, right? I mean, this is a team that had 14 wins in the regular season last year. This is a team that did some tinkering on the O-line and the D-line, have an incredible receiver in Justin Jefferson. So it's not your normal high-pick quarterback playing for a bad team. He's playing for a really good team.
This is Patrick Mahomes taking over for the Kansas City Chiefs, more or less.
Yeah.
Now, Sam Darnold did not have the tenure with the franchise that Alex Smith did. And, you know, you could argue Sam Darnold touching the height that he did last year certainly approached some of the things that Alex did. But they had also made the playoffs, Kansas City had, just the way that Minnesota has. And now you're eschewing that for a rookie that you've got a lot of confidence in,
right,
that you drafted, and that you believe the coach and the environment can help you offset and bring along to some standpoint. It's not that anyone scouting J.J. McCarthy necessarily thought he was the next Patrick Mahomes. But we all go all the way back to the Patrick Mahomes draft ad, and it's not like a lot of people outside Kansas City believed that Pat was going to become what he became at this point in his NFL career. We talk all the time about the fact that what you just brought up, usually these guys go to bad environments, usually these guys go to bad losing teams. J.J. McCarthy is getting to start this off in the best possible way, and so we get to think about what he's capable of in a different way.
And doesn't this feel like the secondary part of the story? Where the 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers is really the headline of, okay, so, I mean, it's got to be – I do not think he's retiring at all. So it's down to Pittsburgh and the Giants. It's got to be Pittsburgh, right? I mean, it's time for him to make this decision, I would think.
We would imagine we're probably getting to that point where this should all happen pretty quickly, although – I think that's what everyone in Pittsburgh is hoping for as well. This was fascinating yesterday. So Cam Hayward, who's been a longtime defensive stalwart around Pittsburgh and is one of the real leaders on that team, got asked about this notion of recruiting Aaron Rodgers and what he would say to him in that process. And Cam was not ready to play the game. Take a listen to this.
So if they called you and were like, we need you to follow him into the darkness for a couple days, he says if you come down there with him, he's signing. Are you going to be off the grid for a little bit, go to the darkness and try to get this guy? We need you. You're our best recruiter. I'm about to get into Darius Slay, and it sounds like you recruited him too. So we need you to start recruiting. Get that NIL bag out like you did at Ohio State.
I ain't doing that darkness retreat. I don't need any of that crap. Like, Either you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or you don't. That's simple. That's the pitch. Like, if you want me to recruit, that's the recruiting pitch. You know, Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to be part of it, so be it. If you don't, no skin on my back.
God, that's how I can tell Cam is getting old, Dad, because that sounded like a you rant where I don't want to do anything I don't want to do at this point. You're going to either come here or not, deal with it.
This guy, 14 years down in the trenches as a D tackle, one of the great players. Yeah, he wants no part of any kind of recruitment. I love it. There's part of me that loves it, right? I mean, when you're talking about bringing in Aaron Rodgers, now again, you've seen Aaron Rodgers the last 2 years, so there's some trepidation. But I think Cam Hayward would have said that about anybody. Would have said that about any free agent they were talking about bringing in. How would you recruit him? You either want to be a Steeler or you don't. I love it. I absolutely love that take.
Well, Cam Hayward, at least last year, sounded a little bit more in on the recruitment of Russell Wilson from what memory sounds like. I think he was on some FaceTime calls with him and trying to get him over there. Aaron Rodgers is a very specific personality, Dad, and I think this was always the thought and why Pittsburgh was built to handle this is they don't care. Like, they are no stranger to great quarterback play. Cam was around during the Ben Roethlisberger era of this team. They had their future Hall of Famer at quarterback that helped them for an era, and they also have a lot of pride in this franchise in a way that is not like the Jets where they're going to let Aaron Rodgers come in and immediately make the team his puppet.
And you would think Cam Hayward, who listen, 14 years, he's obviously on the back, on hole 17 or hole 18 of his career, right? He doesn't have much time left. You would have thought he would have been a little more, let's bring in Aaron, and hopefully we'll get a good year out of him. We can make one more run at this thing before my time is up. But he's not even playing that game. I mean, you love that. That's a lineman mentality right there.
Well, and it's someone who's been around mentality. Like, again, very different. I am not comparing it in this way, but I can remember being an older college player and you hear about recruits all the time. Like, once you get to campus, you don't care about recruiting anymore. You do and host the players that you're asked to do. But like when fans would ask about it or a player that had transferred or anything like that, I can remember being a 4th and 5th year senior and being like, I don't care, man. Either you're going to be here or not. Either you're going to try and help us win or not. And we'll go to battle with whoever's around here. And Cam Hayward, 14 years into his tenure with this team, I'm sure is of the thought where I don't care who's out here. I know what I have to do. I know what our goal and our job is. We'll do it with whoever is around here. Now, who ends up doing that at the quarterback position? Like we said, we're all penciling Aaron Rodgers in right now. We'll see if that's the case. Tom Pelissero, who broke this news, was just on Good Morning Football. Let's take a listen to the latest of what he had on the Steelers in this situation at quarterback this offseason.
For the Steelers, we know that they have prioritized Aaron Rodgers over potentially bringing back Russell Wilson. I am told there is ongoing dialogue between the Steelers, Rodgers' agent, as well as Aaron Rodgers himself and various members of the Pittsburgh organization. At this point, the Steelers are willing to wait on an Aaron Rodgers decision. If ultimately he decides to pursue something else, then the Steelers are examining a bunch of different options, including rolling with Mason Rudolph, who they re-signed recently. He's got a history in that organization. He started a playoff game for them a couple of years ago. George Pickens really likes Mason Rudolph. And where were Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan last night? They're in Tuscaloosa having dinner with Jalen Milroe ahead of Alabama's Pro Day.
So lots on the table, because remember, Dad, the last time on Dragon Ball Z, the story we'd heard around Aaron Rodgers was the potential where if it didn't work out in Minnesota, he could say no to the Giants and the Steelers and just go to retirement at this point in his career. And so kind of having all options on the table. And Jalen Milroe, who is a fascinating and could be polarizing quarterback prospect if we get to the point in the draft cycle where we start to talk about him more consistently, maybe the way that we're starting to talk about Jaxson Dart now. But Pittsburgh at, I believe, the 21st pick, kind of keeping their options open and at least going to vet the guy down in Alabama to make sure that they've got contingency plans in place, because there are not a lot of readily available easy answers for them.
No, and listen, Jalen Milroe is for, if they were to take him, is for down the road, right? He's not draft and insert as starter. So, I mean, he would have time to sit, whether it's Mason Rudolph being the bridge quarterback or you bring in Aaron Rodgers for a year, 2 tops to try and get something out of it. The Jalen Milroe thing does not in any way, shape, or form preclude me from saying they still are going to go after Aaron Rodgers. Jalen Milroe, again, would be a year or two away from seeing the field. So I think this is Aaron Rodgers' job to take if he wants it. I think he will. I do not think he'll retire. I think he still has some football in him and still believes he has some good football in him. And if it's between Pittsburgh and the Giants, we've already talked about this. There's really no choice in the matter. It would be the Steelers.
Yeah, the Steelers represent, in my mind, the perfect mix of desperation and need for change at the quarterback position combined with opportunity for upward mobility for Aaron Rodgers and stability coming off a run with the Jets team that, listen, afforded him a lot of latitude, but we know structurally inside that organization, traditionally, it's not been some bastion of consistency or quality leadership. Hell, you even had the owner coming out, Woody Johnson, this offseason saying he needed to look in the mirror, like a rare admission that, yeah, I might not be doing the job very well. And so you come over to Pittsburgh, and there is at least a well-worn way of doing things. There's a head coach that knows exactly how to deal with big personalities, knows what winning looks like, and just needs a quarterback to help him do it at a higher level. And so if you're Aaron Rodgers, Dad, this is his last best opportunity, it would appear, on the board right now. I don't think there's anything else that's going to give him a chance this late in his career coming off what just happened in New York. And I'm with you. I just hope it's over sooner. Like, I kind of echo the Cam Hayward thing, ready to be done with this. And I get it. You know, as much as we all think a certain way about Aaron Rodgers, as you always talk about, Dad, it's the end of your career. You want to take the time and think about this, not make a rash decision right after the season. But now as the calendar ticks into March, you do kind of owe it to yourself and everyone to go and try and expedite this decision as much as you can.
Well, yeah, you definitely do. Certainly, it's March. You certainly need to make it before the draft, which I'm sure it's going to be coming sooner rather than later. And you look at Pittsburgh last year, their passing attack between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields produced 21 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions. You know, I mean, you got to think Aaron Rodgers could outdo those stats himself, especially with him picking up DK Metcalf. So you think the offense should be more powerful with Aaron Rodgers. And it's a team that won 10 games last year, got smoked in the playoffs, but won 10 games.
How would you feel about Aaron Rodgers becoming your quarterback at Gojo and Golic on Twitter? Steelers fans, we're looking at you. Coming up next, we're looking at Jessica Smetana joining us live from Miami here on Gojo and Golic. All right, welcome back. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you guys. Aaron Rodgers, for anyone that missed it, according to Tom Pelissaro at the NFL Network, not going to be the next coach of the Minnesota, or coach, Jesus Christ, next quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings here. God, a shiver just went down the spines of everyone in the Minneapolis area. So no Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. We are not completing the Brett Favre cycle as the prophecy foretold, which probably saves us from some potential fraud charges later on. But still hanging in the balance, the Steelers stuff. For more on that and everything else, Jessica Smetana kind enough to join us from the Dan Le Batard Show here. Smetty, morning, buddy. How you doing?
Good morning. I was just listening to your last segment about Aaron Rodgers, and I also love Cam Hayward, and I love him being like, "Yep, I'm not recruiting. Sorry, not my problem."
Do you want Aaron on your team?
Mike, how long have you known me?
Long enough.
I'm not thrilled by it. It's actually my boyfriend's a Giants fan, so the last 2 weeks we've been like arguing back and forth, like, you take him, no, you take him. Neither of us really love that prospect. However, the quarterback situation this year is very dire. I personally wouldn't be that upset if we just ran it back with Mason Rudolph and just roll the dice, see what happens. Because it's a bad year to need a quarterback. I think, obviously Aaron Rodgers wants more money than whatever the Steelers offered, if I had to guess. If the money was right, I think he would have just taken it, whatever, 2 Tuesdays ago when that was like, it seemed like that was about to happen. So choosing between the Giants and the Steelers, yeah, I make up your mind, I guess. But right now, if you're a Steelers fan, like, none of the options are really great. The draft isn't great. I mean, I love Jalen Milroe watching him in college. He's electric. He's also mistake addled. So that's not a great short-term solution. But again, your options aren't that good right now.
Yeah, is the apathy starting to really grow on the South Side right now, Jess? Because that's what we've been talking about. It just feels like the Steelers have kind of been on the hamster wheel for a while now since post-Roethlisberger, where it's been better than most, but not good enough to really scratch the itch for everyone around there. So is that the worst thing that can happen to a fan base, is you just start to care less?
I don't think anyone in Pittsburgh will ever actually really care less, but I do think there's sort of like a reality sinking in that you need a quarterback to win playoff games. And the Steelers really botched the end of the Roethlisberger era. Using the pick on Kenny Pickett ended up not working out. Several of their first round picks over the last 5 or 6 years have not really been great. And so, yeah, they didn't really have a transition plan for a quarterback that they knew would eventually retire, and have still been able to scrap together these 9 or 10 win seasons, which is good for making the playoffs, not good for winning games, and also not great for getting a really good pick in the first round where you can draft a quarterback. And so it's not like there's not any one thing that you can blame, except for there probably should have been a better plan in 2021 when you knew it was Roethlisberger's last season. And now you can't really go back and change the past. It's history. So what are your best options moving forward? None of them really point to getting over the 9 or 10 win season hump that Steelers, like the purgatory, I guess you could say, the Steelers have been stuck in for the last few years. But I mean, it's still like they're still making moves. They signed DK Metcalf. They obviously want to win games, and they're not trying to tank, if you even can tank in the NFL. So it's just kind of a frustrating middle ground that the Steelers are stuck in, I think.
Do you think Mike Tomlin has a time limit on his tenure at Pittsburgh?
I don't. I've never they just extended him also. I don't really think that there is a time limit. I think the frustration from the fan base is the loudest it's been in a really long time. But I think it's sort of still up for debate how much you really put on Tomlin versus put on some of the front office decisions. I think the blame can go around a little bit, but there is no doubt that Tomlin has won games with teams and with quarterbacks that are not top 10 quarterbacks, not top half of the NFL quarterbacks, and still made the playoffs. So you do obviously still have to give him credit for that.
Man, if you're Mike Tomlin and you want a little bit of deflection from the ire of fans, bring Aaron Rodgers in as your quarterback seems like a surefire way to make sure that the blame is going to go somewhere else if and when things hit the fan. So that's going to be the situation everyone's trying to monitor now that Tom Pelissaro reports that the Vikings are moving forward with J.J. McCarthy as their quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers will not be completing the Favre triple crown of going from Green Bay to the Jets to the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll wait and see on all that one. Smetty, I wanted to ask you, we had seen the Unrivaled League wrapped up a little bit, and you and Lehman got to go down there and check that out in person. What was that experience like? It's I know, a made-for-TV spectacle. I'd heard John Skipper talk about this on Pablo Torre Finds Out, that it really is a made-for-TV event. But what was it like witnessing that in person? And is this something that you think is going to have real staying power in terms of its role in the women's basketball ecosystem?
I certainly hope so, because it seemed like the players enjoyed it. It seemed like the fans really enjoyed it, the ones that were either watching on TV or made it to Miami for a game or several games. I had a really nice time. The entire arena is built inside like a sound stage. And so it's not like a big basketball arena. It's like this really intimate setting, but it's very well designed and well constructed. So there's really no bad seat there if you do get in. And the pace of play of the actual game, it's 3-on-3, but with like a modified court and a modified format. It's really fun to watch. It's exciting. It's fast paced. Every game ends on a game winner with the Elam ending, I think it's called. There's a target score in the fourth quarter. So
Right.
I really enjoyed it. I hope that it continues. It seemed like there was a lot of buy-in from the players. Obviously, they're getting paid a lot to play in the league, and they're getting equity, and it seems like there's like maybe like a real sense of ownership over trying to like make this thing work and make it sustainable. So I hope that it does continue. I think that it is, by all intents and purposes, it seems like it's going to keep going. And I think the basketball itself has just been it's been a good product. It's been fun to watch.
Going from Unrivaled to the WNBA, it's at the height of its play and the height of its popularity. Is this going to be the last season before we see the CBA being renegotiated October 31st and the players possibly sitting?
Yeah, it's been well covered. Like, this has been a massive 3-year stretch, 5-year stretch for the WNBA and for women's basketball, and popularity and everything else, sponsorships, brand deals, ratings. Everything's going up right now. So yes, the players are definitely going to try to get their fair share in the next CBA. There could be a work stoppage. I mean, that's one of the many tools that the players will have to make their voices heard at the bargaining table, just like in any other sport. But like I've read stories about how women's college basketball on ESPN, the ratings are up this year, and the March Madness ratings, we'll see how that goes in the next few months. But it seems like things are still trending upward, and that just means more money for everyone and more a fairer share for the players, hopefully. So it's a super exciting time to be a women's basketball fan, I think. And Unrivaled is one reason why. The renewed sort of interest in March Madness and the women's bracket. I know more people than ever filling out their women's brackets this year, and it's a great year to watch March Madness if this is your first time as a women's basketball fan, because there's a lot of teams that could win this thing. I don't know who is going to win it. There's maybe 7 or 8 teams that I could feasibly put in my championship game, and I wouldn't be like, that was stupid. Why did I do that?
Yeah, how far down does that go, Jess? I saw Elle Duncan the other day on the show say traditionally no one lower than a 3 seed has gone out and won this. And certainly this year, you got teams like Notre Dame that fell all the way down to the 3 line after the season that they've had. So who would constitute a surprise at this point in your eyes?
That's the interesting thing about Notre Dame specifically. It wouldn't be a surprise if they were a Final Four team. I don't think it would be a surprise if they won the national championship. I also wouldn't be that surprised if they lost in the Sweet 16 round, because the way the season ended, they weren't playing their best basketball, but they're still one of the most talented teams in the entire tournament. So that, as a 3 seed, that would not surprise me. LSU is sort of similar. I think there's some injury concerns there, but they're still a really good team, and they have a veteran coach who knows how to coach in these games, who has been there before and has been the underdog before and gotten a lot out of her team. So that wouldn't surprise me as the other 3 seed. As far as I would be surprised if a Duke won the national championship. That would surprise me. I would be also surprised if NC State won. But like outside of those two seeds, there's really not a lot of other teams from, UCLA down to ND where I'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? The rest of the 3 seeds, probably, yes, that would surprise me. And then, 4 seed onward would definitely surprise me because that just hasn't happened before.
Juju Watkins, the best player in the game?
I think right now she is, but I don't think the gap between her and some of the other great players in women's college basketball is as big as people say it is. Also, that being said, she's only a sophomore, so she's only going to get better. And, next season, she could take it to a whole nother level. But I do think, Hannah Hidalgo, who plays for Notre Dame, is an excellent player. Madison Booker is a great player. Lauren Betts really turned it up in the Big Ten championship game 2 weekends ago. So there's a lot of talent spread around the country.
It really is. And to your point, like 2 of them being true sophomores is an insane coup for women's basketball. That it continues, like you said, to not really have to survive and subsist on the upset model that the men's bracket is always lauded for, to have all this success and popularity. It really has been driven by the star players, the quality play, deep tournament runs by household names that people know. And so I do think that is still great for the game that you now have this consistent star building that goes on there. Let's switch gears, Jess, and talk about stars in another field here. Formula One season just kicked off this last weekend. How we feel about the Australian Grand Prix and the start to a new year in Formula One with all the changes and movement on the driver front?
Yeah, it was a really fun race. Weird weather always leads to weird results. I think that's sort of a common thread in F1. Like if you're a fan, sometimes you're just like, ooh, what if it rains a little bit? That would be kind of fun, right? And that was certainly what happened in Australia. It looks like Lando Norris and the McLaren will be the top car. Obviously, it's only been one race and the conditions were weird, like I just said, but they were really fast and Max Verstappen couldn't really keep up. He tried his best and could not overtake Lando in the beginning or sort of middle end of the race. So, I don't know, maybe a new champion this year. It's a long season. We'll see. Obviously, Lando was, chasing last year and some races just didn't look like he really had the juice for it. But if he's sort of the front runner this year, maybe some of those confidence issues or whatever that is doesn't matter. And he just takes it. And that would be kind of exciting.
First time Max Verstappen hasn't led in the driver's standing since May of 22. About a minute to go, Lewis Hamilton's always been associated with Mercedes. Now he's in his first year with Ferrari, finishes 10th. What are the expectations for him in the new ride?
Yeah, I think the expectations are really high. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle success if him and Leclerc are both out and both like front runners. This past weekend, strategy calls were sort of typical Ferrari, but not in a good way. They made some gambles that didn't pay off. The car was quick, but not the quickest. But I still think the expectations are going to be really, really high for Ferrari and for Lewis Hamilton in particular. I think it would be one of the great stories in sports if he was able to pull off a driver's championship with Ferrari, a storied brand and also the greatest F1 driver of all time. I know up for debate, you can debate me on that, but I really like Lewis Hamilton. So he's my favorite of all time. And I think the best, but, yeah, that's one of the big storylines to watch. And again, not off to a great start, but it's a long season. There's like 25, 24 more races. So I don't know. High hopes for Lewis and Ferrari.
Strategy mistakes from Ferrari in pivotal moments. I, for one, am stunned by this outcome here. You guys can check her out, as always, on the Dan Le Batard Show. Our dear friend, Jessica Smetana. Smetty, thanks for stopping by this morning, bud. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Smetty.
Yeah, Dad, it is jarring. It's, late stage Emmitt Smith, seeing him in a Cardinals uniform. If the Cardinals were one of the prestige franchises of the NFL, I guess, at this point with Lewis Hamilton. I guess we'd need to find a more apt comparison for that because he is someone that still can drive at a high level, and he's going to one of the most storied franchises in Formula One.
Yeah, he really is. It'll be interesting how his first year in Ferrari ends up. It'll be something interesting to watch.
Coming up next, let's have Dalen Cuff fill out our brackets for us here on Gojo and Golic. Well, the Dodgers have wrapped it up, a 6-3 win. They take both games in Tokyo against the Chicago Cubs as Shohei Ohtani makes his homecoming. Back in Japan, Ohtani went 1 of 3 with a home run that barely cleared the wall, got reviewed for fan interference, and ultimately, you and I all know that those umpires were not going to overturn a Shohei Ohtani home run in his return. And if they wanted to show some love after the fact, apparently you can go shake Shohei Ohtani's fake golden hand while you're in Tokyo here. Exciting return for him. These teams return and help begin Major League Baseball season on the 27th and 27th, as all 28 teams will be in action that day. I'm excited to catch up with one of my former head coaches, my first head coach, the man who offered me a scholarship at Notre Dame, Super Bowl champion Charlie Weis, who's going to join us in about 15 minutes here to talk about Jaxson Dart. Dad, someone that, we've talked with Coach privately, has been really high on Jaxson going back to before last season and certainly in the lead up to this draft cycle, where now the rest of the public conversation seems to be catching up. And so I'm curious. I mean, Coach Weis obviously has worked with a bunch of great quarterbacks over the course of his career. What he's seen in Jaxson Dart that's had him thinking exactly what everyone else is starting to now for a good long time. That coming up in about 15 minutes. But I saw and heard something that I had not seen in a while yesterday when I called my parents to catch up. My mom and dad were on a way to some sort of, event or deal where they had to get a little bit dressed up and leave the house on a weeknight. And my dad actually attempted to make a decision for himself. Dad tried to wear shorts out and got completely shoved back to the student section by my mom, who told him he didn't look presentable enough to leave the house. And Dad, you actually protest. I thought you had given up decision-making and seceded that to my mom years ago. And now all of a sudden we're out here actually trying to make choices of your own. What the hell was that about?
Well, first, I could have gotten away with it, and nobody else wore shorts there, but I had shorts and I had a short sleeve button down on. and I had nice shorts on, and basically, I don't care what people outside of my family think. I could have walked into that place and everybody could have had a bad look on their face that I had shorts on, and I would not have given one damn about that. So the other thing, I'm not going to lie, while I'm having the sling off of my shoulder, again, my shoulder, I have a brand new shoulder, and I'm starting the rehab for it, it still doesn't feel great getting dressed and undressed. So I got undressed out of the casual stuff I was wearing, put on the shorts, the button-down, socks, and shoes, and walked out to be ridiculed by my wife with you on the phone, basically saying, go change. That was probably the biggest issue, that I had to now undress kind of one-armed, and still when I use my left arm, it hurts a little bit, and then get dressed again. So that kind of added to it. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to complain. I didn't want to try and make an excuse. I just bit my lip and I went and changed.
So to be clear, you have at every turn thus far post-operation done what you've wanted to do, gone against what the doctors have told you to do with the sling and all this, and now this is where you want your sympathy, is as you're trying to put pants on. This is the area where now you want credit for going and making this happen. I just want to make that abundantly clear. This is where you're cashing in that token on wearing pants.
No. You just asked me why I was kind of bummed out I had to go change. That was the reason. I'm not looking for sympathy. It just hurts to change clothes and to change them once and then within 2 minutes have to change them again. Again, what I wore was presentable. Nobody had shorts on. I get it. It's kind of a nice place, but they were nice shorts. And bottom line is, I don't care. But you went and, of course, stuck up for your mother and said, it's not what you want, Dad. It's your reflection of your mother. So that obviously made me go in and
Dad,
change.
in this relationship, you were essentially the player and Mom is the coach. Like, that's what, and that is the order you've signed up for, by the way. The way you describe it is that's exactly the dynamic you signed up for, to where Mom would hang your clothes when you would get ready to go on the road and call games. She would lay out all the outfits and stuff for you to wear. And so you've agreed to this in the marriage contract years ago at this point. That's why I was just questioning why you'd be a think for yourselfer, because as I stated there, my coaches would always tell us, especially my offensive line coaches, hey, what you put on tape is a direct reflection of me, the offensive line coach, and what I'm doing. I can't go out there and play, so all I have is what you end up showing up there. And for that, you are a direct reflection of Mom. The same way every husband who leaves the house, in theory, dressed in some part by their wives, is a direct reflection of them. And so I just thought you needed to take that a little bit more seriously, given all she's done for you over the years.
And listen, there's no doubt your mother wears the headset as the coach. I completely get it, and that's how I want it. I want her to make the decisions. That way I don't have to make the decisions and nothing's my fault. I'm just telling you, this was the main reason that it hurt to get undressed and dressed again. That was because, listen, it's not the first time I've walked out in an outfit and was sent back into the bedroom to change into another outfit, okay? This wasn't my first rodeo, first time doing it. But the added pain of changing clothes kind of made it like, man, do I really have to? I don't care how I look. I look good enough for this event. But as I normally do, I acquiesced. I went and changed and made your mother happy.
All right, there we go. You did your job and got the job done on this front here. I appreciate that. I just was, again, stunned that this is where you decided to be a think for yourself, or someone who's going to help think for the both of us here. Very excited for this one coming up. March Madness tipping off soon. We know we had the first four kick off last night. Everything was very exciting about that. But North Carolina gets a big win. Alabama State gets an even bigger win at the buzzer for that team. But we got to figure out what to do with the rest of these brackets. And so for help on that one, we're excited to bring in our buddy over at ESPN, Dalen Cuff. You've seen him doing a great job covering college basketball over there, hitting it from the betting angle. And we have him with him here now to try and help us fill out our brackets. Dalen, good morning, man. We appreciate you bearing with us. How you doing?
Good to be with you. The Golics had a little technical issue on my side. When you guys came in, you were talking offensive linemen. I was like, guys, it's March Madness. Can we get a freaking football break? But I get the analogy now. I like it. I like where we're going. Got it.
Hey, we had a Hail Mary in a play-in game last night.
We did. Yo, with 3 seconds left, that's a risky pass. Somebody's got to touch the ball. I was going to go over his head and come back. I was like, oh my God, but hey, it worked out. Didn't cover, but it worked.
Dropped it in the bucket. Worked out. Well, worked out for them. But Dalen, where are we at? We'll get to the rest of the bracket at large and some of the conversations. But we know the controversy and conversation was all around North Carolina being one of the last 4 teams in, getting in over the likes of Indiana and West Virginia. Now that we saw the ball go through the basket early and often for them last night, what's the ceiling for this team, whether or not people think they deserve to be here?
Good question, Gojo. We've seen teams, whether it be VCU in 2011 or UCLA, 6-7 years ago. We've seen teams in that 11 spot when you feel derided. Once you get in, it's like new life. So that's what they played. They played free and loose. And honestly, guys, if you're ever backing the Mountain West, you just can't do it in this tournament right now. It's just the last 10 years outside of San Diego State, the one year they made that run, to quote Doug Kazarian, the Mountain West stinks. I don't actually think that, but when it comes to betting, they all seem to really be a struggle. And North Carolina put it on them. They could not control the pace of the game. They could not slow it down. That's why San Diego State had to have it. Now, in terms of their ceiling, Ole Miss is a much better basketball team. And Ole Miss has beaten a lot of really good teams. And I think that's going to be a compelling first-round matchup. They can't turn the ball over, which Ellie Cadeau has had a little bit of issues with at times this year. The ceiling is, I think, the Sweet 16, but that'd be impressive. I think San Diego State is a team that would have finished behind North Carolina in the ACC, and they demonstrated that last night. The difference is Ole Miss is good, and Ole Miss has some big-time wins and some good guards, but it should be a good game, and I'd be surprised if they went to the Sweet 16, but that seems about the absolute max to me.
So in filling out sheets, I fill out multiple sheets. I don't understand people filling out one sheet because you do bad early on and it's burned. So if you do one sheet, you tend to stick to chalk. When do you have the first number 1 seed losing in this tournament?
Like, I got to say, I feel like you guys, the sheet of integrity is like built into my childhood. I feel this argument was put forth by you and Grady like 15, 20 years. I feel like I've heard it a million times, and I have to do it that way because we literally fill it out, I don't know, 12 minutes after it's announced, and then we're on shows, and you kind of got to – I keep trying to caveat. Real quick before I answer that question about the chalk, though, there are a lot of injuries to key players. So if you filled out your bracket and you've not revisited – you might want to check in, tomorrow morning and see what's up with Alabama's Grant Nelson and Juwan Roberts from Houston. We know about Flag, but Malik Brown is, I think, huge for what Duke's long-term potential is. So the injuries matter. In terms of chalk, I hate my bracket because I ended up with 3 1s and a 2. And it's gross. It's disappointing. It's probably never going to happen. All of us bozos are saying Florida's going to win. Now, I love that in November and December when they were 20 and 25 to 1. Depends what books you were looking at. Now they're 4 to 1, and everybody's on them, and that's not a good thing. And I am too, so they're probably not going to win. Sorry to Todd Golden, but I ended up with a lot of chalk towards the end. I do have Duke losing Arizona. I tried to mix that in, wondering the Flag situation, wondering what's going to go on with Malik Brown again. He's their best, most versatile defender. A Texas Tech upset St. John's, not much, but yeah, man, I don't know why it is that way. I think part of the problem is we watch so many freaking games. You feel like you have this knowledge base, but in the end. That's why we call it madness, because no matter how much you study this stuff or learn, it doesn't make a difference. My mom's probably going to beat me. So you throw some upsets in early. I got the big seeds going in early, but then when it gets down to the brass tacks, we've got 4 3s and a 1. 4 1s and a 2.
That's what everyone's always looking for. Yeah, 3 1s and a 2 to cap it off. But you mentioned how we get there. The fun in the first round is the double-digit seeds pulling off the upsets. Everyone's always trying to scour and figure out who could be that next Cinderella. So who are some teams you're keeping an eye on that have that sort of Cinderella Sweet 16 run potential of the double-digit seeds in the bracket?
I think it's instructive, folks, too, even if you're not a gambler, but they have those big buildings in Vegas for a reason. Look at the lines of some of these 11s and 12s and 13s. When Vegas tells you it's going to be a close game, keep that in mind. So you got your UCSD against Michigan. It's a 2.5-point line. A lot of us like UCSD. They don't turn it over. They turn you over. They can shoot the heck out of it. Michigan's coming off a game where the tournament, they won 3 games in 3 days. That's great. We've seen teams win their big conference tournament, have a turnaround to Thursday, and not play particularly well. They got to go to Denver, 10 p.m. East Coast tip at altitude. That's not an ideal situation coming off what they came off of, given also where UCSD is coming from in terms of travel distance. I'm big on Yale. That's showing my Ivy League bias, but remember, they did it last year. They beat Auburn. This guy, John Poulikitis, is a name people probably should know. He had 28 in that game. They're very capable of beating A&M. A&M can't shoot. It just comes down to rebound of the basketball. And people are like, well, it's an Ivy League team. They can't do that. They're top 25 in rebounding percentage. And remember, there was a famous quote when Yale beat Baylor in 2015. A reporter asked Torian Prince, how did you get rebounded by Yale? A great response by him. He goes, well, they jumped up and they grabbed the ball first. And that's what happened. Because it doesn't matter what your name of the jersey. You got to go make the play. They were a really good rebounding team. So I think if they rebound the ball, they've got, I mentioned Pulakidis, Bez Mbang is a great guard too, two-way guard player of the year in the league. And James Jones has won before in this tournament, and as much as last year. I think they can win their first round game in A&M, and then that sets up UCSD against Yale. And we have seen this in recent years with 2 double-digit seeds, which guarantees a double-digit seed in the Sweet 16. So I think that little pod there can produce that, and the winner of that plays Auburn. I love BYU before the tournament started, and I hate when there's teams that I want to advance based on watching that team, but then they match up against a team that I wanted to advance playing that team. And VCU BYU is that matchup for me. So it's problematic. I'm going with the Rams, one of the best defensive teams in the country. They're number 1 in effective field goal percentage, which weights your 3s and your 2s defensive percentage. They limit your 3s, which is really important against BYU. They're top 10 in blocks in the nation. They've got great rim protection, tons of length in that team. And when they're on offense, about usually 4 guys on the floor shoot around 40% from the three-point line. So they stress you in that regard that you have to space out, and they can drive it on you and make 3s. So I think VCU can beat them. I didn't think VCU can beat Wisconsin because it's a similar recipe. Wisconsin needs to make 3s. How they play, I think VCU is a good matchup for both those to take some flyers. Those are 3 double-digit seeds I have going further. I have Ole Miss going to the Sweet 16, which is beating Iowa State. Iowa State's carrying a big injury, but that's only a 6 seed. So those are the ones that are kind of off the beaten path, if you will.
So little less than a minute to go. Rick Pitino, talk of the tournament, bringing multiple teams to the NCAA tournament. Now he's a 2 seed at St. John. What's the ceiling for that team? Final
4, without a doubt. The big concern with them, though, is they don't shoot it well. And in today's modern basketball, if you can't make 3s, I think at some point the rubber's going to meet the road. So I have them losing to Texas Tech, but they can easily win that game. They can win that game without a doubt. It'll be a very, very tight spread. They defend one of the best teams in the country. They're super physical. Kadari Richmond's a great closer. RJ Lewis was the player of the year in the Big East. And, of course, you have Rick Pitino on the sidelines. Like, you have everything you want, minus the ability to shoot the ball and the ability to shoot it from the free throw line. Both those things concern me in a tournament scenario. I think they're like bottom 25, bottom 30 in the nation in free throw percentage, bottom 50 in three-point percentage. So those things I think are big red flags. But, in a certain game, they're so physical. They're always going to be in the game because they defend so hard.
On the way out, down 30 seconds here. I don't know if we got it before. Who do you have cutting down the net and winning the whole thing?
Florida, because I'm an idiot. So there you go. We got the Gators winning it all, and that's what we're sticking with. That's what I did right away. Then I started seeing all the shows. I'm like, oh God, we all have it. It never. Now, granted, everybody said, well, UConn last year. UConn was a traditional, historically great team. Not saying that Florida can't be, but that was a little bit different for all of us to be like, oh, they can do it again. This is a different kettle of fish, if you will.
Well, we're probably going to be idiots right along with you. So check him out all over ESPN at Dalen Cuff on Twitter. Does a phenomenal job. Dalen, we appreciate the time this morning. Enjoy March Madness. We'll try and make sure we get more basketball in than offensive line talk with you for the next month, all right?
Anytime, guys. And I'll work on the technology next time. I'll be on time.
All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And this one's going to be a ton of fun already. Excited to welcome in my former head coach at Notre Dame, former Super Bowl championship winning assistant coach with the New England Patriots, and a man who seemed to be enjoying the rejoin music here. Charlie Weis, kind enough to join us today here. Coach, good morning. We're glad you liked our tunes around here. How you doing?
I did. I mean, I'm sitting there and saying, okay, I can roll with this. It's not on my morning playlist. I go on my hour and a half bike ride every day. That's not on my playlist, so I was enjoying it.
Well, Coach, what is on the playlist then? Because I always tell people the only thing I remember from your playlist back when I was in school, so you were the head coach for me my first 2 seasons in South Bend, and on the pregame playlist, your only song you needed on there was Who Let the Dogs Out by the Baja Men. So is that still on the playlist for you now when you go on the bike ride?
That's on my mixtape. You know, I usually, because I'm now, you know, my bike ride is going longer, I usually stick these days with one artist. Like it might be Darius one day, it might be Zach Brown, Bon Jovi, Bruce. You know, like I usually stick with one artist and stick with their playlist rather than my mixtape.
That's impressive. It's impressive out moving around. I like that a lot. So obviously you do your moving around and you listen and watch football, obviously. So you've got this Jaxson Dart. The last Mel Kiper mock draft had him a Mississippi quarterback, number 9 in New Orleans, and you have said you think he's a first-round quarterback. What makes him, in your mind, a first-round quarterback?
Oh, I didn't say I thought he was a first-round quarterback. I said he is a first-round quarterback. So let's get exactly what I said. The Monday before the Senior Bowl, I said, okay, well, now let me say this before the Senior Bowl practices start. At the end of this week, everyone's going to say, well, maybe he's going to go in the first round. I go, and if you followed my tweets, I don't tweet that often like you guys, but I basically have been saying before it happened, and after the combine, the only thing I said is, I told you so. I mean, the combination, I don't know Ward and Sanders personally. I don't know them personally. And I think that when you're drafting a quarterback, there's more than just how good does he look on tape. I mean, because there's reason to argue that Dart looks as better than everybody on tape. There's reason to argue that if you watch all his tape. Even the Florida game that everyone says, well, he threw 2 picks in the Florida game. Well, did you? I guess that everyone must have missed the 8 drop balls that happened in that game because I was there. I mean, I was at the game, and there were 8 drop balls in the game. So where everyone wants to talk about is 2 picks when they're desperate at the end of the game, they're forgetting all the other things that could have happened in that game to win that game. And then they go against Duke, who's one of the best defenses in the ACC by far, and it was a man playing against boys that day. You know, this kid, I've watched him for 3 years, and here's what impressed me more than anything, Mike Sr. The first year that he was at Ole Miss, I was visiting Charlie, who, you know, as we all know, is the offensive coordinator and his position coach. And I'm sitting in the back of the room, not saying a word because I don't overstep my bounds. I just watch. And afterwards, he asked if he could ask me a couple questions. I said, sure. And he goes, what's the difference between a good quarterback and a great quarterback? And I said, look, I'm not going to talk to you about football because that's what you got Lane, that's why you got Charlie. You can talk to them about football. But I'm going to tell you why Tommy Brady was different than everyone else. And I tried to not define, but explain the it factor. I go, Tommy Brady would work the entire team. He didn't just work the skill guys. You know how it is. You've seen quarterbacks. Both of you have been in locker rooms where the quarterbacks work under the best offensive players. He might work some offensive linemen, but he's working the skill guys. Tommy worked the entire locker room, every position on the locker room. DBs, linebackers, you know, defensive linemen, specialists. He worked everybody. And I explained to him the it factor. I said, I can't give him a definition, but I can tell him what the best, who I think the best of all time, what he did. And this kid went out, and for the next 3 years, that's exactly what he did. Talk to anyone coming out of that Ole Miss locker room. Talk to anyone coming out of that entire organization. When everyone says exactly the same thing about a guy's leadership skills, you know they have it. Now, the last time I saw this was Baker Mayfield. When Baker Mayfield came out, everyone at Oklahoma, everyone outside Oklahoma wanted to talk about all the, nitpick all the things that happened that they watched. But everyone in Norman, every single person said the same thing about it. Well, this kid has the it factor. So combine that with what you see on tape. I mean, that's what organizations are paying big money for, right? They want the face of the program. They don't just want a star quarterback. They want the face of the program, and that's what Jaxson Dart is.
Coach, how difficult for, like you said, you've had a window into who he's been as a player there through your son being around that program. But when you're on the other side and you're part of these NFL teams and you're coaching there and you're trying to figure that out through the course of the combine and the pre-draft meetings, how difficult is that for organizations in the NFL to try and find this information and get this comfort level with players that they're just sort of speed dating with in the lead up to the draft?
So you can't do that without being around them personally. You can't do it. You could talk to them. You could interview them. Okay, but you got to be around them. You got to. I mean, I don't have to worry about him on the board because I know what I've seen him on the board. I've seen the insights that he has. But you have to be around him, and then you have to be around the people that are around him. Hey, look, you know that anytime somebody goes in and asks their coaches, they're gonna give ringing endorsements of their players. That's just the way coaches are. But what about the cafeteria worker? What about the equipment manager? What are they saying about these guys? You got to learn about these people, not what their boys say. You got to learn what everyone says, and that's why these personnel organizations. The personnel departments of all these organizations are almost as important as the coaches are because you got to find out what makes the guy tick. Because if you want the guy to be a face of a program, you got to know whether or not they could be the face of the program.
How important is, listen, a first-round quarterback's a 50-50 shot of making it or being a bust. But I think the odds go down when you have a quarterback who hasn't started a lot in college. Jaxson Dart has played a ton in college. How important do you think it is to get major time in college before you go to the NFL?
Well, it takes a lot of the guesswork out. I think that's important. When you watch a guy, did he get better from his first year to his second year to his third year to his fourth year? What's the ceiling, Mike? What's the ceiling? Has he reached it already? Or is he getting better as he's progressing through college? And I think that one of the positive residual effects of NIL is that players are going to stay in college longer. There's a lot of negatives with NIL, but that's a positive because players are going to stay in longer because they don't have to leave to go make some money. They're already making some money. So they're not going to be in as big a rush to run to the NFL so they can so they can make some money. And I think that you watched Bo Nix last year. Now, I loved Bo Nix last year. My top two quarterbacks last year were Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. It turned out to be prophetic because they were the best two players. Now, did that mean I didn't like Caden Williams? No. But Bo Nix had started 55 games, and his touchdown to interception ratio was 10-1. I mean, I love Bo Nix. So we went into the draft last year. I said, why are people not talking about Bo Nix? And, everyone, it's easy to watch Jaden Daniels. He won the Heisman Trophy. I mean, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to see how Jaden Daniels played. But go look at Bo Nix last year. Well, go look at Jaxson Dart this year. Bo Nix, Jaxson Dart. Toss them in a hat and pick one of them because you're going to get the same type of thing. An experienced guy who has the it factor with a 10-to-1, 10-to-1, ratio, or whatever Jaxson was this year. It wasn't 10-to-1, but it was still anything more than 3-to-1, 4-to-1 is outstanding, and that's what you're going to get with him.
Dad talked about that what feels like 50-50 split sometimes with these guys land. So much has to do with environment, Coach. When you get a guy in the NFL, the environment that you create for a young player coming into the league. We're getting ready to watch J.J. McCarthy, who was a first-round pick for Michigan last year, looks like be the day one starter for Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, who most people view as someone who does a good job with that. Sean Payton last year with Bo Nix. In your mind, what are the most important things that a franchise needs to have when they're bringing in a young quarterback to try and give him a chance to be successful early?
That's a very good question, because besides surrounding them with players, you have to have offensive coaches that build the offense around them, not have an offense and try to put somebody into it. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, like Ben Johnson's going to Chicago. The best thing that ever happened to Kid Williams is Ben Johnson going to Chicago. And look at New Orleans. New Orleans right now is a team where you bring in a young quarterback with a veteran quarterback. You bring in a young quarterback that can sit for a year with a head coach who really knows offense. I think that's important, to surround a guy with good players, but you also have to build the offense around the player, not have the quarterback fit the offense.
So, Coach, with just a couple of minutes left, I want you to have a chance to talk about your son, Charlie Weis Jr., been an OC under Lane Kiffin at Mississippi. He's 31 years old. He's winning awards as an assistant coach. I mean, if and when do you think he is ready to take on that first head coaching job in college?
I think he could be a head coach now, but I think he's learning invaluable lessons from Lane Kiffin. Now, Lane Kiffin and me are like the odd couple. I mean, We're like Felix and Oscar. I mean, we're so far. But I've watched Charlie grow, and the relationship that he has with Lane is phenomenal. I mean, they think exactly alike offensively. I mean, and you could say whatever you want about Lane, but I mean, I've watched him grow as a person, and he's become so much of a better person as well as a coach. But tell me who works social media in the NIL any better than Lane Kiffin? And to win these years now, Mike, if you don't know how to work the NIL, you have no chance. You're not going to win just by, winning the top high school class every year, because you got grown men that have been playing for a couple of years already that you already know what you got. And it's just a question whether you can figure how to get all these guys in there, and can you build chemistry in a short time frame. But really, the college football has become, can you handle free agency? That's really what it's become. And I think Charlie's learning valuable lessons. Look, you don't want to take just any job. I mean, he's got a really good job. Being an offensive coordinator is a way better job than a head coach. It isn't even close. Because you don't have to worry about all those other things. You get paid a lot less money, but it's a lot better job, because you get to coach football and you don't have to worry about all those other things that the head coach has to do.
It's so true. And from someone who did that at a very high level, I'd say people should definitely listen on that, as they should on this front with Jaxson Dart. Coach, we could sit here and talk quarterbacks with you all day. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you for the time. We really appreciate it. Please give our best to the rest of the family here. And we're excited to see your words maybe become prophecy again here this spring.
Well, thank you. I love the Golic family. That's why I'm on this show today.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. We love you back. We appreciate the time this morning. Coming up next, we'll wrap things up on this show and take a look ahead at more to come in Mel Kiper's mock draft next on Gojo and Golic. Thank you to my former head coach, Charlie Weis, for stopping by to talk about the rise of Jaxson Dart up draft board, something he saw and predicted a long time ago, but now seems to be catching up in the popular discourse. We'll get to not only where he sits in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft, but Mel Kiper coming out with some scorching hot quarterback takes of his own yesterday as it pertains to the top overall quarterback in this draft. But off the top of the show, we celebrated what we thought was the end of this Aaron Rodgers saga with the Minnesota Vikings. Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network had reported that the Minnesota Vikings had received and rebuked a number of trade offers for their rookie, or not second-year quarterback, but basically a rookie quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, and instead were going to go forward with him as their starter, softly shutting the door on the Aaron Rodgers conversation in Minnesota. Or so we thought. Our friend and the Athletic senior NFL insider Diana Rossini just tweets out this. The Vikings have strongly considered and will continue to monitor Aaron Rodgers as an option, but they're not ready to commit at this point in the offseason, per sources. They understand this could lead to him signing elsewhere or retiring. J.J. McCarthy's spring will be key. So, Dad, that last part especially, what J.J. McCarthy's spring looks like, as one of the potential deciding factors for Minnesota, basically leaving the door open on this relationship, saying, hey, I'm not ready to put a label on it, but I'll text you. Maybe we can still hang out. You're allowed to date other people. Verging on toxic relationship status for the Minnesota Vikings and Aaron Rodgers, but could threaten to drag this out even further.
Oh, listen, not in my opinion. My opinion that if this is the truth, that says he's not going to Minnesota because he's not going to wait. Pittsburgh's going to have to go another direction. The Giants are going to have to go another direction. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to retire. So he's going to have to choose. Again, it's going to be Pittsburgh over the Giants. He's going to have to choose Pittsburgh because those teams will eventually have to move on. And to go to Minnesota, if they're waiting on J.J. McCarthy, they know if they sign Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starter. He's going to start over J.J. McCarthy. If they're not sure how J.J. looks and want to see how he's going to look, if they wait and miss out on Aaron and J.J.'s not ready, they'll fill the void with another veteran quarterback to bridge to J.J. But this still, to me, is Aaron is going to sign with Pittsburgh because he still wants to play. He's not going to run out. If he waits and Minnesota decides not to, there may not be any more chairs to sit in the quarterback musical chairs. So I think this is as good as Minnesota saying we're not taking him because he's going to have to choose Pittsburgh over the Giants.
This feels like, for anyone that watched the most recent season, ironically enough, in Minneapolis, of Love is Blind on Netflix. Because anyone who watched that show will remember a little couple called Dave and Lauren. And throughout this entire ordeal, Dave keeps talking about his sister and how she doesn't approve of all this, and his friends don't want to meet Lauren because they don't know if she's here for the right reasons. And Dave keeps pushing her away and won't give the letter she wrote to his sister until after they have this conversation, but won't actually break it off with Lauren because he doesn't want to go out and be the one to actually break this thing off. He doesn't want to have to make that decision, and so he just pushes her away through this entire process. That's what the Minnesota Vikings are actually the toxicity of Dave in this relationship, and they're the ones pushing Aaron Rodgers away, keeping him at arm's length, trying to make him make the decision for them because they don't want to be seen as the bad guy on national television because the Vikings have this great Q rating and everyone loves Kevin O'Connell and look what they just did for Sam Darnold in this relationship, blah, 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 blah. They're pointing to Aaron Rodgers' relationship history like Dave did with Lauren and her relationship history before they got on the show. It really is all there, and the fact that it centers on Minnesota, Dad, is just a little bit of serendipity.
I'm not going to lie. I stopped listening after when you mentioned Love is Blind. I shut down. So I don't know what you said. I don't care.
I'm not going to lie.
What you said.
Workshopped it all on the fly, and I'm amazed how well and how apt that analogy is for the situation. Because, Dad, this is what that smells like. Minnesota not wanting to be seen as the one saying, for whatever reason, and I don't know what that reason is, whether it's, respect that Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings have for Aaron Rodgers or what have you, whether this is coming from Aaron Rodgers' camp who doesn't want it to look like he got broken up with, and that they're seriously monitoring this. I can't tell. And I always encourage people, when you see reports from any insider, and this is not a jab at Tom Pelissaro or at our friend Diana Rossini, this is just the reality that all of this information comes from somewhere and usually for a reason. Someone wants this out there. And you always have to ask, when you see a report, who benefits from this information being out there? And this certainly, and I can't tell, Dad, which side would benefit more from this, because I'm with you. It does seem like all signs point to Minnesota doesn't actually want Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback going forward. They just don't want to be seen as turning down a guy who is a future Hall of Famer and a guy who is one of the best quarterbacks of this era. Is kind of how I read this situation. Is they actually are kind of like a weird breakup, trying to soften the blow of rejecting Aaron Rodgers publicly for a guy who's going to be starting in his second year in the NFL coming off of an injury.
Which I don't know why they care so much about that. I mean, you like J.J. McCarthy, you want to play J.J. McCarthy. Now, I will say he's coming off a knee injury, so you do have to kind of see how he moves around. Again, it was an early knee injury. He's had plenty of time to rehab that, so he should be good and ready to go by the time camp starts and even for OTAs. But yeah, this to me does not change the fact that Minnesota is out. Whether it's those reasons or not, that they don't want to make the decision, that they turned away Aaron Rodgers and want Aaron to make the decision. I still think for Aaron, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I would agree. I think this is all going to be window dressing and dragging this out until we get to that point eventually where we see the jersey edits of him in Pittsburgh and we can all go on with our lives this offseason. But again, that's the latest from Diana Rossini, that it seems like the spring's still going to be something to monitor. To your point, all an interesting message to J.J. McCarthy, which I would be much more concerned about the messaging around if I'm the Minnesota Vikings than anything associated with Aaron Rodgers. Dad, the message pretty clear in the NFL draft. We talked a little bit about the mock draft that Mel Kiper just put out that had Jaxson Dart at 9 overall. He's got Cam Ward at 1, and Mel Kiper bases these mocks off what he's hearing around the league. But he told anyone who will listen, and we don't have time to play the sound right now, but Mel Kiper making it clear he thinks Shedeur Sanders is the better quarterback of him and Cam Ward at the top of the draft here. Dad, are you surprised by that at all from Mel Kiper? It seems like everyone had sort of solidified to Cam Ward being the guy at the top of the heap.
Yeah, I think Cam Ward is, of this quarterback class, is at the top. He moves better than Shedeur. He can make more throws than Shedeur. He has a stronger arm than Shedeur. Now, listen, Shedeur had to endure so much pressure and so much movement in that pocket. But, boy, he showed some great poise at times, made nice throws at times. But I would listen, and quite honestly, I like Jaxson Dart as well. I do think he's easily in the first round, depending on how high he goes. But between Cam Ward and Shedeur, I definitely like Cam Ward better.
Yeah, I at the beginning of this process, I did wonder if, man, in this day and age, having a quarterback who was experienced, smart from the neck up, dependable, and sort of safe in the way that Shedeur Sanders feels because of the pedigree would be more appealing at this point in the NFL. But then you look at more of Cam Ward and a lot of the same experience. I mean, the guy has also been a long-tenured college player at 3 different schools, but also has the kind of arm talent you're looking for. You see Shedeur turning down throws because he knows he can't make them in certain junctures of these games. And so I do ultimately disagree with Mel Kiper on this, and I'm still not sure where I'm at on Jaxson Dart. He's a guy I want to watch more of here. I trust and respect the opinion of Charlie Weis, who we just had on, implicitly when it comes to these quarterbacks, but we just see so much of this ends up being location specific and about the situation you end up in as much as anything, Dad.
Yeah, as far as, if the rest of the draft, like 2 and 3, if the Giants really are thinking about a quarterback, can Cleveland bluff them enough to think that they're thinking quarterback to have the Giants try and jump to 2? That way the Browns can move down to 3 and still get Abdul Carter, who they probably want to go on the other side of Myles Garrett. That's going to be the interesting situation, what the Giants do. Maybe the Giants sign Russell Wilson before the draft and don't go quarterback or use Russell as a bridge. There's still certainly some interesting dominoes that need to fall before the draft.
Yeah, the top 3 picks are going to be absolutely fascinating in this upcoming draft for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Plenty to keep an eye on there, plenty to discuss as we finish off the show with a major homecoming on This, That, the Third here on Gojo and Golic. All right, let's finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and watch us here 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Go and subscribe and hit the bell over there. Thank you to our guests that popped by the show today. Jessica Smetana from the Dan Le Batard Show, ESPN analyst Dalen Cuff talking March Madness, and my former head coach, Super Bowl champion Charlie Weis, kind enough to join us to talk a little Jaxson Dart. Catch those wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Dad, let's start off this, that, the third with a major homecoming here. Pair of astronauts that had been stuck in space on a mission that was supposed to last a week and ended up stretching to more than 9 months, finally touched down yesterday. The 2 astronauts, NASA's own Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, splashed down off the coast of Florida aboard a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule around 6 o'clock Eastern yesterday. They had gone to space last June on a rocky test flight of the new Boeing Starliner spacecraft, and the officials decided once they got out there it was too risky for them to return in that one, and so they had to wait up in the International Space Station for the next crew to get there so they could make the return trip back home. Beautiful footage of this and the return there. Saw dolphins splashing around in the water when they were coming back and getting back. That's got to be a very unusual level of relief. Now, as an astronaut, you sign up to go out in space. I'm sure you know that these things are always possible. But when you see that kind of extension on a mission here, that first feeling of touching down back on Earth has to be one of the most surreal feelings of all time.
Yeah, it wasn't a record of how long they were in space. There have been people longer, but it was supposed to be a 9-day trip that turned into 286 days. So that can certainly mess with you mentally. It still blows my mind how the fact that just a few minutes before they were parachuting down, they were traveling at 17,000 miles an hour orbiting Earth. I mean, that just... I just can't comprehend that speed. And then it was like a movie script, right? The capsule's bobbing in the water and there's dolphins, as you mentioned, dolphins jumping around it. You couldn't have written a better script than to see it finally land and dolphins jumping around. And then just what great take you inside footage of bringing the capsule up on the ship, having the astronauts come out and know how they needed help, and got it was all routine, them getting escorted out like on stretchers because of going from microgravity or whatever it is to the Earth's gravity. And I mean, it's amazing. The whole thing was amazing for how long they had to be up there to go up and get basically brought back down. It was just, technology blows my mind. It's tough for me to comprehend.
A week mission turns into 9 months. What's the underwear situation got to be like? I'm sure, do they have spares in the International Space Station? Does it, without gravity, is there as much friction to worry about with things like chafing to where that's even a real issue that you've got to entertain? I'm not sure, but that was the first place my brain went.
Yeah,
and also, I didn't realize, so your body doesn't do things up with no gravity, they have to work out basically like resistance, like band working out 2 to 3 hours every day. So their body is prepared for when they come back down to Earth. I found out so much. They had like the NASA broadcast on, and these 2 women were kind of explaining everything, and I learned a lot about being up there and then coming back down into gravity and what you have to do. It's pretty wild.
Dad, did you remember how fun learning is and think maybe I'd like to do more of this going forward now after that?
I learned stuff, but then some of it I just can't comprehend. Like, I can't comprehend how big space is. I can't comprehend they're talking about going to Mars, which will be like a 6 to 9 month trip. At going at like 20,000 miles an hour. I mean, how far is it? I mean, I can't broaden my mind to think of the breadth and depth of space.
Well, maybe you can broaden your mind as we transition to that, to entertaining the glory of food in Cincinnati, because Jamar Chase cannot make that leap. Him and T. Higgins sat down and had their press conference after going and negotiating their deals and getting signed at the same time here. And Jamar Chase, on a joyous occasion and a great one for the city, decided to use his time in front of the microphone to take unnecessary shots at Cincinnati food. Listen to this.
For me, I like Cincinnati because it gives me the opportunity to come here and focus. I'm not distracted out here. It's not too many things to get me, off pace out here, and it's strictly what I'm focused on. That's really tunnel vision for me to play football. So, at the end of the day, the food's not the best. We could work on that, but I'm from New Orleans. I'm not used to the food yet.
So, about as backhanded a compliment as you can get from a guy that you just made the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, to basically say, Cincinnati's so boring, I can spend the time necessary on my craft, and also your food's not as good, which, to be fair, the background of him being from New Orleans, going to LSU, you can understand why other things are going to pale in comparison, but we got to stop the Cincinnati food slander. The Queen City is doing an outstanding job, and there are plenty of places I enjoy eating when I come into town.
Yeah, compared to Louisiana food, which is certainly a lot more rich than other foods around the country, I could see a big difference. But why you got to do it? He backhanded the food. He backhanded compliment the city, saying, you're right. Basically, it's so boring, I just get to focus on football, and that's it. Not a ringing endorsement for the city of Cincinnati, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, Jamar, try growing up in central Connecticut. It'll make Cincinnati feel like Los Angeles when you go out there and see all the splendor that they afford you there. From Skyline Chili to Grater's Ice Cream to Montgomery Inn Ribs, cheese, on and on down the list. There are plenty of things to enjoy there. Now, the Geta, I was never really able to really get on board with as much. That was kind of a bridge too far for me, but I appreciate the thought nonetheless.
Yeah, Montgomery Ribs. You just said it. That made my mouth instantly start to water. That's wow. That's some great food.
Yeah. No, I could put their barbecue sauce in a glass, stick a straw in there, and be perfectly content to go ahead and slurp the day away there, cut and print. Dad, let's get to the third here, away from slander and more towards an upgraded payday. The third, EA Sports has now upped the payout for the college football game for players. Remember, last year there was a lot of hullabaloo about EA Sports only playing the college football players who agreed to have their name, image, and likeness used in the game $600. This year, that jumps to $1,500, which just lets me know, Dad, that kind of like the salary cap jumping in the NFL, business was booming. EA Sports College Football 25 obviously became one of the most popular video games of last year, immediately worked its way back into the zeitgeist, all these things that we expected when it came out, and the payday clearly indicates that.
Yeah, listen, the pay had to go up. The 24 edition of EA Sports College Football was reported to be the highest grossing video game in 2024, sports or otherwise. So you're right. It's like the salary cap going up. You got to pay more. You got to pay more, and these players are going to get more. Probably still not enough considering the money they're making off this, and we are in the era of college players making money. So, but again, they have no way to negotiate more money. There's no union or anything. So it's basically, saying, hey, we're going to throw you some more money. And listen, it's a $900 jump from the $600 they were paying them. So, and for college kids maybe who aren't getting a lot of NIL money or any NIL money, it's money to put in their pocket.
A year later, I'm still pretty terrible at this game, but I will say I am surprised given all the things you just mentioned NIL-wise. When you got to go through in recruiting, I'm in an EA Dynasty League with a bunch of my friends. And in the recruiting, you don't actually have an NIL budget. You're going and recruiting the old-fashioned way, having to put in the man hours with these young men. And so I'm a little bit surprised that we have not yet integrated the collective model into the EA Sports game.
Mike, I was in calling, I think, either a Rams game or a Charger game, and I was staying with you. And I watched you play in that. You suck. You're awful.
Yes.
You're not good. You're really, really bad. Really bad.
No, listen, I have no dispute for that right now, and it starts on the recruiting trail, so I'm just waiting for the point where I can finally reward these young men the way that they deserve, not with empty promises, but with full pockets and wallets. If you agree, download, subscribe, rate, review the show, leave us a 5-star rating. Watch us here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much, y'all. We'll talk to you tomorrow.